All right, so here we've got a cinnamon fern. You know, I'll probably do an addendum to this video when these get a little bigger. But it's got all those hairs, and I planted it, so I know it's a cinnamon fern. We've seen a bunch of it. Remember, that's a good wetland plant, so I have to water it all the time. I got a watering system. If we come over here, this is our little fern row, if you will. And this is actually, you can't really tell right now, but it's a royal fern. Again, I'll come back with an addendum, but it'll be doubly oddly pinnate. Now this one, you can tell what it is. This is a maidenhair fern, and it's kind of sad looking because it's early. And a lot of these are actually leaves from last year. But I don't
see.
Yeah, which one are you doing?
The main hair.
This one. So they're really finely dissected, little tiny leaves. I mean, this is, you know, one from last year. Right next to it is another good native. It's got the thumbs. See the, so
Let me
these
pick
are,
that up, and then we might get a little better contrast there because I couldn't see that. All right, yeah.
so you got the thumbs. So this is the Christmas fern.
Let's point out those thumbs just one more time so that they're really evident. Yep.
So here's the
Yeah, there we go.
thumb.
Yep.
And the fiddleheads are coming up. You can see the thumbs aren't. Now this next one is not super common. Well, I shouldn't say that. This one, this is an interrupted fern. I've been to lots of places when we go camping where there's just tons of it. It's usually in kind of wetlands. I've seen it lots when I do boardwalks, kind of in the UP. It's too hard to tell right now, but you see these little pinnae or pinnules are, they look different. Those are going to be the spores, and then as this continues to unfurl, then there'll be normal leaves, if you will. So it'll be normal leaves, then the spores, and then the normal leaves, and that's why it's called interrupted fern. Your picture's got a, I mean, I'll put a good picture on the assignment, but it's really distinctive because of that. So, and it's easy to remember, interrupted fern. Most of these are non-native. But this last one over here
Not that one, right?
is, yeah, not this, not the Japanese, but this is little tiny. This is the sensitive fern, but it's just a little tiny one of them. It kind of at the wrong angle. And remember that mid vein is winged. That's what makes it the sensitive fern. But then it's also got different you know, it's got fertile fronds and sterile fronds. So, so these are last year's. And you can see it's a commonly planted. I mean, obviously everything in this yard you can get conventionally, if you will. There's nothing here that I dug up and brought over. I mean, I dug it up from my other yard, but I didn't, you know, steal anything from a park. So everything here you can buy if you look around for it. And sensitive fern is really commonly planted, and it can spread and be quite aggressive. It's a wetland plant, so it so you got to water it. We've got blueberries here, and they've got little berries. They're not berries, but little flowers. They're actually kind of bluish, and they'll turn a little more white as they open. Unfortunately, I think it's deer that are coming in and eating these. Same thing happens at our house. in Grand Rapids, the deer come in and they love to chew on these. You can see all the damage.
Yeah.
Back here is ribes, a gooseberry. You can see the little, they're not, this is a horticultural variety, so it doesn't really have thorns per se, but it's still got some hairs on there. And they're pretty distinct leaves, but you can see kind of the thorn-like on them, like the little hairs and stuff. Some of that might be cobwebs, but there's little.
Yeah, you can barely see them, but you can see them.
So, and this is that's the black one. It kind of tastes like pine sap.
Blackcurrant.
Over here. Well, we should have while we were there. There's beautiful violets.
Yeah, there's really good ones down here. I might just backtrack a little bit to this area. It's a little easier to show them.
These are the ones we keyed out. And these are just the common ones in your yard that aren't being mowed all the time. So they make for a nice clump. And remember, if you tear apart one of the flowers, it's got the little beard on it, and they've got the spurs on the back. There's raspberries. These ones don't have, well, actually they do have thorns. I thought I got horticultural. I got the horticultural ones, so they have smaller thorns, but they still have a little bit, and they're trifoliate. And then they'd have raspberries later, and they spread pretty aggressively. There is a nettle here. We
we usually get some nettles back here.
Here's a nettle. So you can see on here do this one because you can really see.
Yeah, I will. I need to get in here.
You can see along the stalk, it's got those little spines. That's going to be, those are called trichomes, and they're little hairs that are essentially filled with hydrochloric acid. So as you touch it, those hairs break, and then they release acid. So you'll get literally an acid burn from them.
That's what they call them, stinging.
And so it's a stinging, but it's not like poison ivy where you get an allergic reaction. Now some people are then allergic to that, so they react a little bit more, but it really is a chemical burn. So if you wash it off pretty quick, it's no big deal. I've always got some gung-ho guy that'll say, oh, let me try, and they rub it and they say, oh, it's nothing, and then 30 seconds later they're like, oh man, that actually hurts, because it takes a little bit. But so characteristics other than the stingers, look at these serrations. They look like well, they're these big triangles. There are some other things that do that, but to me, when I see those big kind of forward-pointing triangular serrations, I think of a nettle. It's also got, well, this one doesn't show it as well, but the veination is a little bit unique in that, well, you don't really see it in this though. So the leaf margin is what gives it away for me. And then you can always rub it and see if it hurts. We come over here. We've got, this is a cherry, and if you get close on this, so you'll want to, this has got really nice hypanthium. So remember, the hypanthium is see how the petiole gets really fat, the receptacle is super fat, And that's the bowl, the bowl, if you will, that the flower is in. There's some of these. I mean, this one's just really nice because you can actually see inside some of these flowers, and you can see that it's a bowl. This one right here, really, you can really see it. Yeah? Yeah, this one. See how you can kind of see inside that bowl? But just looking over here, see how the buds, you can really see how they kind of got the hourglass shape because there's that big hypanthium. Okay, so that's a cherry. Other things about cherries, remember the, I don't know if you can see it on this, but they'll oftentimes have little glands on the petiole.
See if I can't get that in.
I can't see it with my normal
no,
eyes.
actually...
Some of them are better than others.
Yeah.
But if you had a hand lens, you would look for that. You'd know it's a cherry because it'll have cherries. I know it's a cherry because I planted it. This is another gooseberry. This is a better one in the sense that this has got some serious thorns. Again, it's a horticultural one, but this has got green berries that are quite good. But again, the leaves are distinctive. They're kind of three-lobed palmate with the thorns. Right next to it, we've got an ericaceae. This is an azalea or a rhododendron. Again, it's got the leathery evergreen leaves, and then it'll have these really pretty flowers. They're not quite open. We've got holly next to it. So these have really distinct leaves, evergreen, super commonly planted. This will have then the red berries later in the summer. They start out green and then they turn red. When you plant a holly, there's male and female plants. So you have to have at least one male so that then you can produce berries. So if you've got a holly that's not producing berries, it could be a male or it could be a female without a lover, if you will. Over here, I've got so what's the fern? Put my fist in it. Ostrich fern. It's a lot bigger now. Here's the grass that was at my house. This is the sweetgrass. Now, I should tell you, I transplanted this actually just this week because I've always wanted to have it here. If you transplant sweetgrass, you're supposed to add a little tobacco. It's a Native American ritual.
Because it's a sacred plant.
Because it's a sacred plant, you should add a little tobacco to where you take it from, and then add a little tobacco when you plant it. So I did. There are, through here, this one you can actually see. This is a wild cucumber. Hopefully you guys are going to plant a garden this summer, so you don't have to go to the grocery store as much. And this looks like your typical cucurbit. So your cucumbers, squash, watermelon, all those have the same leaves at the beginning. And this will be really pretty in the fall. We've got all through here our wild ginger. And I planted this just a couple years ago, and it's really doing well. And so remember, here's the flower. It's a fly pollinated. But they're just neat. So wild ginger. This is that same one that we saw with all the huge anthers, and I forgot to look it up. It's a type of anemone, Ranunculaceae family. We've got the bloodroot, and the flowers are just ended on this one. For whatever reason, it was really delayed. Usually these flowers would have been quite a bit earlier. You know, depending on where you're at, you can get plants ahead or behind. Remember, these leaves are super distinctive with these unusual lobes. So in a lot of ways, they look like the wild ginger, the base here, but then it's got these fingers on it. And some of them have more than others. These ones have a lot. It's a pretty plant. Right here. So this is my little forest understory garden, if you will. Some weeds. We've got, again, we saw this a minute ago, but these are a little bit better. The Christmas fern. We've got some mayapple.
There's those thumbs.
Yeah, so you got the thumbs sticking up here. Mayapple. This one's actually got a little bud.
Move your head up in here. Why don't you show that bud?
There's the little bud
Underneath there.
underneath. It'll
there.
grow up. We've got, of course, it's not there yet. But this is actually the blue woodflocks.
Well, we can always do a part 2, right? So.
This is a trillium. There are some red ones in the wild, but obviously I bought this. So, and it's a nodding trillium. I don't know why it's not doing so well, but there's right next to it is wild geranium, but there's no. Here's the inflorescence is just starting, so again, maybe we'll do a part 2. I put in a teeny bit of our bluebells. So here's some bluebells. They're not real obvious, but these are actually running strawberry.
Let's point those out again here.
So this one's a better one. They're good opposite leaves. It's actually starting to get a little flower. Remember, the flowers aren't very obvious. So running strawberry. So these are a good review of our understory forest. If you just go up, we've got overlapping scales. So this is a white cedar or arborvitae or thuja. And this is a big one. Oh, sorry.
Looking for a still shot. Ooh. You want to
You're-
hold one still? That'd be great.
There you go. Over here, where the bunnies haven't eaten them, I've got strawberries. These are your horticultural ones, so they're a little bit fatter than the wild strawberries, but otherwise they look the same. They're trifoliate. They've got the serrations. These serrations look a lot like the nettle, to be honest, but they don't look anything like the nettle because they're trifoliate. And then good rose family with lots of stamen. And they'll obviously have strawberries later if the bunnies don't eat them all first, or the kids.
It'll be the kids.
Yeah, the bunnies are going crazy. This is another currant for gooseberry. This is the red one. And again, it's a horticultural one, so it doesn't have much of a, it doesn't have thorns, but it does have little hairs.
Let's see if I can find those.
Can you see them?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So the, again, there's some viburnums that have the same leaf. I screwed that up before, but the flowers are quite different. And then, well, these are obviously alternate leaves too. All right, we keep coming this way. We've got, this is a serviceberry. Last week when we did the serviceberry in my yard, it was in full flower. You can see it's finishing, and you can really see the hypanthiums now as they've kind of lost their petals. And again, this will have a red berry. The berry on it has the sepals, so it'll, you know, like rose hips will have kind of the 5 sepals left on them. These berries will as well. The
Let's see them at the base of apples as well.
yeah, the leaves are, they are distinct in that they're really oval. Usually, I mean, so I recognize them. I recognize that there's lots of stuff that looks kind of like that. So you'd really need the flower or the berry. Okay, over here we've got, this is another euonymus. It's got opposite leaves. They're kind of leathery. This is burning bush, which is a commonly planted shrub in people's yards. Now, what makes it really easy, it's an aggressive, it'll take over areas. Look at the stem. See how it's got this weird stuff off it? See how it's got this, I don't know, it's got like plates on it? Looks like it's like wearing armor. That's just unusual. And so the common name is also the winged euonymus, and it's talking about the stem being winged. So you can see it on some of the smaller branches too, but it's less, it's less obvious. I've seen some different plants with it much bigger than others, but this can escape yards and take over forests, so it's a problem one. So don't plant it. That's the neighbors. I would have killed it. Oh, just because. This is an Apiaceae. It's actually parsley. So Apiaceaes tend to have really dissected leaves. This is kale of some kind, and that's Brassicaceae. Of course, I've been eating this so that it doesn't produce flowers because I want to eat the leaves, but I should have left a couple to have flowers. Maybe we'll do a part 2. They're not open yet, but this is, see how the buds are paired? So this is going to be a honeysuckle. It's actually a nasty invasive, but it's a pretty nasty invasive. All right, so now let's go to the lake edge. Just point out, these leaves are, I don't think you can see it though.
The lighting is a little off. Do you want to shade your body there maybe?
You know, we can't really see much
There we
here.
go. There we go. That's much better.
I don't know if you can see that they're fuzzy. It's the Borangiaceae. It's a forget-me-not. It's not on your list, but it's a good wetland plant, and they'll have really cute little blue flowers.
That are clearly unforgettable.
Yeah. Over here, we've got a bunch of stuff that should be familiar. We've got the flat, so this is an iris, a bunch of iris. Iris should be a good wetland plant. We've got some good sedges. They're coming out in threes. If I
You can see that very clearly right now.
okay.
Yep. Nice big one.
There's mint. Mint has got a square stem, opposite leaves, and then this one is true mint, and it's mint. It's actually a native, but that's a weed. I don't know, but it's naturalized for sure. We've got cow parsnip, and cow parsnip we'll see, but it should get as tall as me. And we've seen it a couple times now, so those pretty distinctive leaves, it's unusual.
Comparison of size, that's my hand there. So these are very large.
So big, and this will get huge. There is, we'll see a lot of this next week. So it's not on today's list. But this is Caltha palustris, which is marsh marigold, which is a ranunculaceae. So lots of stamen, lots of unfused pistils. You can see these ones here with all the unfused pistils. So that's good ranunculaceae. And then the leaves are round. Real rounded. So now it's supposed to be a good green to eat. I've never eaten it.
You have to boil about 4 times though.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a pain in the butt to
Really have to process it. So, and like most forage items, you got to try just a little bit first time, make sure you're not allergic.
But you'd never want to collect stuff that then, you know, if you only had the one plant here.
Like us.
Yeah, and it's supposed to also be only good before it flowers. So
Yeah,
so
You usually like to forage it anyway.
yeah. All right, I'm gonna just grab a leaf of this real quick.
Sure.
This is
Water snakes a little bit over here. Good habitat.
This is sweet flag, and see how that's got this weird mid vein. I mean, it's not really a vein. It's on both sides. This crease on it. So that crease helps.
Maybe a still shot of it.
That crease, and it'll be on both sides. You're losing the focus on it.
Yeah, I know. It's a tricky one to get. With all the green in the background and the wind. I don't know. I'm having
Okay. I can see it. So, and it tastes sweet. But you wouldn't want to eat it. I think it'll give you diarrhea. Okay, that's. Oh, right here we've got. Well, we got better ones other places, but so it's hard to tell. This is actually an elderberry, but it's hard to tell because they're all on top of each other. We got better ones elsewhere. But here is one that we haven't done this yet. And this is a red maple. I'm just gonna grab a leaf. If you look, the leaf margin is serrate. So they're tiny little serrations. I mean, there's obviously all your maples have some serrations, but these have tiny little serrations. So if you've got tiny little serrations, then it's red maple. We've done sugar maple, red maple, and silver maple. Oh, you can, they'll see the little winged.
Oh yeah, the helicopters,
Yeah.
the Samaras.
Um,
You can kind of just see those Samaras starting, those helicopter-like fruits. They're kind of starting now.
here.
Dangling in the wind.
There.
Ah, you found some that are lower to reach here.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, there they are.
And red maples, that they're cute in red, but they're not very cute when they fall down on your picnic table. So, all right. Over here we've got dogwood. So the dogwood, this is the flowering dogwood. And it's actually, see these, what a lot of people think of as petals, aren't petals, they're bracts. And you can see on the inside there, those are individual flowers. And that's one of the reasons why the flowering dogwood keeps its flowers so long, because they're not actually petals. But they're just starting to open, and they're kind of sad because of the cold weather.
It was in the 20s a couple nights ago.
And remember, if I tear the leaf, it'll have the stringing. They're not very big though, so I don't.
Yeah, we can do a part 2.
Yeah, but we've got the good flowering. Right now, as you go through a neighborhood, there are 3 different flowering trees. There are some different dogwoods, and the dogwoods you can get white to yellow to pink. Then most of what's flowering is in the rose family. So almost everything out there flowering right now is in the rose family. So as you go for a neighborhood walk, I want you to look at the flowers. So this, again, we've got a massive hypanthium. Okay, so you can really see on the inside there how it's a bowl. And then you can kind of see, if you look from the side, that it's fatter. The cherries that I showed before were easier, but you can see how there's kind of that big. This is and then the roses rose family has lots of stamen, and they tend to be pretty big as well. This is ornamental pear, and this can be a huge tree. So. And then the third one that's the real common is redbud, and I'll show you a redbud in a minute. But most of what you're seeing in neighborhoods right now is going to be some type of rose. So it's going to be an apple, or a cherry, or a pear, and there's lots of ornamental varieties of it. Okay, these are all not much to see here. So let's go over this way. If you point to the base of that apple, see how it looks like someone cut it and stuck it on there? That's because someone cut it and stuck it on there. There's nothing to see here. They haven't opened yet. This is an apple tree. But, they'll have the buds do have the big hypanthium still.
Yeah, for whatever reason, the lighting, I'm not able to focus on that one at all. It's just.
It's fine.
finicky.
We've seen lots
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes the lighting is not.
Maybe point the bark out. That's a sycamore.
Camouflage bark.
So it looks like a bad sunburn.
Camouflage.
Here's an old leaf. There's no leaves out yet. These can get quite a bit bigger than this.
Yeah, for scale of the hand, you know.
But they can be twice the size. And so they're palmate. They kind of maybe look like a maple, but the serrations are bigger. And they tend to have really 3 lobes. There can be a 5th down here, but it's tend to be really flat at the base. So they're kind of maple-like, but not really. Okay. Let's go over here. There's some viburnum. So first there's a nice Ericaceae again, leathery leaves. We saw this one in my other yard. This is an Aronia. I don't know, I think you can actually see those little red dots. I mean, I can see them with my naked eye. You see the little red dots on the vein?
Yeah, hold it nice and still. I might be able to get in there. Yeah, you can see them somewhat. Yeah.
So that's a good characteristic for Aronia. And then these will have, so the common name is chokeberry. They've got berries that super high in antioxidants. I think they taste good. Obviously, given the common name, not everyone does. This is a type of viburnum. So remember, viburnums have opposite leaves, and then the family has the paired, just like when we did the honeysuckle a minute ago, the paired buds. But then this is making, so they kind of come to one place. So I keep calling this a cyme. It's actually a corm. And this smells really good.
We'll hold it nice and still. I can try to. There we go. Shows that nice pattern there.
But almost any of your opposite leaved, real pretty flowers for shrubs are going to be a viburnum. Most of them. This is oh, you want to do the. All right, we got some pines here. This is a white pine. I don't know if you can see this. See the five needles? The tip of my thumb? Okay. They look real bushy. We've got another Ericaceae. It looks like it's dying, but it's gonna be pretty regardless. It's actually an azalea. I couldn't tell you the difference between an azalea and a rhododendron, other than when you buy it, it's got a different tag on it. They're both rhododendron species or genus. Like this one. Oh, that's too bad. This is actually, most of your honeysuckles are not native. They're weeds.
This one is.
But this one is, but it doesn't have any flowers right now. So, yews. Remember, this would have the red berries. So there are native yews. So this is a good native. I said a minute ago we'd have some better elderberries. These are better elderberries. So unfortunately, what's happening is the whole branch is coming out right now. So there's multiple leaves and a branch. But if you look at some of these older ones that have, or not, I shouldn't say older, but earlier came out, you can see that there's opposite leaves Like on this one, you can see better. Opposite leaves, oddly pinnate. The only other thing in Michigan with opposite leaves, oddly pinnate, is an ash, but an ash is a small tree. This is obviously more of a shrub. Yeah. So, ash. Sorry, elderberry. Around here, I've got some weeds growing. That's kids left this.
Yeah, the worm ranch got left open.
The Galium. Galium's easy because of the world leaves. There are a bunch of different species of Galium, and the common names aren't all Galium. Okay. We've got...
There's our neighbor's garlic mustard patch.
Yeah, we're gonna actually walk over there because I want to get the red bud. We've got a little bit of garlic mustard.
We've eaten most of it though.
The garlic mustard, again, they've got the square, the cross-like flowers. Careful, those are thorns.
I know.
But the leaves are really distinct with those kind of big fingers on them, and then they smell very garlicky. Again, it's a good thing. It's a good green to eat, but you usually want to mix it with something. So, like if you mix it with, I don't know,
Eggs, steak,
yeah,
other things.
So
in a salad.
So if you mix,
Not standalone.
yeah, I wouldn't eat it just all by itself. I mean, you could, but it's kind of strong. But it's a good flavoring. These are all raspberries. They're actually black raspberries. But there's some cherries over here.
Got a little bit of grapevine mixed in still too, don't we?
Yeah, so all the grapevines over here. So let's do the cherry first just because it's pretty. I'm fired up that they
Survive.
They seem like they've survived. So this is a sour cherry. So we actually have a fair number of cherries. But it shows all the good characteristics of a cherry. If you look at the stem, it's got lots of lenticels. It's kind of a smooth bark with lots of lenticels on the younger. It's got serrate leaves. It's got this massive hypanthium. So good cherry. There's, again, these aren't open yet, so it's kind of annoying. But grape leaves. So this is grapevine. If you look at the older vine, it's real flaky. Grape leaves are edible, particularly the young leaves. There's
quite tasty actually.
this is actually a sassafras, but you can't tell.
Nice leaves on this one here.
Yeah, so this is a sweet cherry.
Nice lenticels too on the bark.
Yeah, and but what's even better, look at the petiole. See those big red glands? If you got glands on a petiole, it's probably a cherry.
Yeah.
See those big red?
Yeah, you can see them. Yep. And there's those hypanthiums again.
Okay, so back here.
Another one here, hand.
I put in a pawpaw, but you can't tell yet. Looks like it might have died. Redbud's not doing anything yet.
Do you want this one here?
Nah,
No.
we got
It's a review. It's a review.
Oh, I do. Was that yeah, that's a red pine, so you might as well. Look at the stalk, and then it'll have
There's
two
the red
needles.
bark right there.
So the trunk
And
is,
the needles.
it's really more kind of orangish. And then if you look, the needles, so let me see if it does it right. They're really long, and as you pull this back, it should snap. Yes, it snapped.
Yeah.
So here's a good
You
one.
want to do that demo one more time? I think
Yeah.
it was too fast for me to get the whole thing.
Okay, so it's twos. If you pull the needle back, it snaps.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yep.
good red pine.
Yep.
They're long needles and they snap. Okay.
Is that a good stopping point?
Nope.
Before the next one?
Nope. There's a couple other things here.
Okay.
These are bracken ferns coming up. Unfortunately, I was really hoping that they'd be up. Remember, these will come out in threes, and then these will get big. They'll get really big. Remember, bracken ferns take over the world. We've got, look at the buds here. They're paired, so this is going to be a honeysuckle. Opposite leaves, paired buds. And then right over here is probably our only example of a box elder.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I like to keep this one here because the leaves, particularly when they first come out, look a lot like poison ivy. So they're trifoliate, and they've got kind of the loose serrations, or irregular serrate, compound trifoliate. So they look like poison ivy, but they're not, because they're opposite leaves. And then once the leaves get a little bigger, they'll actually have more than 3 leaflets. So it's a maple. So Acer nugundu, so it'll have the little paired winged samoras, that, little helicopter things that come down. But it's a common kind of weedy tree in neighborhoods.
This is a new one now.
Well, this is just a red maple.
Right.
You can see the
But a
little
different
serrations.
species from what we were just pointing out.
Yeah. So again, this is just a little weed here I should whack. Morning.
Yeah, I definitely don't see that smooth notch either, like you see with the sugar maple. That's gone in a red maple. You have nice red petioles too.
There's actually, we haven't done, I think this is Virginia creeper, but actually no, it's not. I don't know what, I can't tell what this is.
Beautiful flowers on this tree. Wow.
So this is a sassafras.
Root beer.
So this is where you get your root beer, and I'm bummed because the leaves haven't come out yet. So the leaves will come out next. But the branches are really, they smell like root beer.
Yeah.
The roots are what really give it the smell, but if you take out the roots, then you kill it. So, and the branches are enough. If you take a little cutting of one of these branches and chew on it, it tastes kind of like root beer. Root beer without all the sugar. If you go to a Native American powwow, they'll have sassafras tea. And so it tastes like root beer without all the sugar.
The bark is incredible too. It's that really deep tire track bark. Really thick treads on that. It's hard to see. But...
We should see some sassafras next week with the leaves. If not, we'll do an addendum later, because these leaves will obviously come out. And let's pause and we'll go